After my elder sister swapped our brides, the husband who loved me in my past life regarded her as his one and only wife. In this life, the young general who married me also remained chaste for her sake. I, however, bore the infamy of stealing my sister's wedding, tormented to death by my mother-in-law. Reborn on the day of the arranged swap. I tore off my veil and smiled at my elder sister as she climbed into my wedding palanquin. No need to swap. You can have both. With that, I hoisted my spear and rode off toward the northern frontier. This marriage? I refused to go through with it. Main text: watching Wei Lan bend down to enter the Xie family's wedding palanquin, I finally realized I had been reborn. In my previous life, I watched Wei Lan's substitution marriage unfold without uttering a word to expose it. The simultaneous weddings of the two Wei sisters drew the attention of the entire court and the realm. Under such scrutiny, the generations-long loyal Wei family could not withstand such scandal. Thus, Wei Lan married Xie Tingyu, the third-place scholar in the imperial exams, chosen by my father for me. And I married the young General Li of the Guangbing Marquis household. Wei Lan said the betrothal was only for the Wei family's daughter, either me or her would do. She loved Xie Tingyu and begged me to let her have him. Amidst my mother's and her tears, I chose to compromise. Just moments before the wedding procession, we swapped rooms and bridal gowns. But I never imagined Wei Lan had lied. She had long been secretly involved with Li Ming, their hearts already entwined. On our wedding night, Li Ming exposed my true identity. How could the proud young general accept marrying the wrong woman? He stormed to the Xie residence demanding a replacement bride. Though the Xie family was humble, Xie Tingyu was a noble gentleman of unyielding integrity. He believed the 6 rites were complete, heaven and earth had borne witness, Wei Lan was his legally wedded wife. How could he bear to see his wife disgraced, let alone traded like merchandise? He fiercely shielded Wei Lan, never letting her show her face, never allowing her to suffer the slightest injustice. Seeing the Xie family's refusal, Li Ming stormed to the Wei family. He threatened his mother that if she didn't provide a satisfactory explanation, he would go to the palace and petition the emperor for justice. His mother was terrified. Avoiding my gaze, she told Li Ming, it was my own affection for him that led me to secretly swap my sister's marriage. Neither the Wei family nor Wei Lan knew of this. At this point, she could only protect one of her 2 daughters. She chose Wei Lan. Just as she had every time before. To silence Li Ming, mother offered a compensation sufficient to shut the Li family forever. She ordered my arrest and personally administered the family punishment, beating me until I was barely alive. Finally, Li Ming could bear it no longer and commanded them to stop. You were once a beauty, he said disappointedly. Why did you choose to be a thief? Li Ming carried my unconscious body back to the Li residence before heading to the frontier himself. The arranged marriage was thus called off. But the scandal was too vast and absurd, spreading throughout Chang'an overnight. Everyone knew it was I, Wei Changfeng, who had rejected poverty for wealth, stolen my own sister's betrothal, and made a laughingstock of myself by marrying into the Marquis' household. By the time I awoke from my unconsciousness, everything was irreversible. Beaten by my mother until my body was ruined and my reputation utterly tarnished, I was confined to the inner quarters of the Li residence. Months later, the Northern Di invaded our borders, breaching the passes. Li Ming died in battle. When the news reached the capital, my mother-in-law wept until she fainted. She blamed me for driving Li Ming to the frontier, causing his death. She tormented me relentlessly, demanding I go to the underworld to beg his forgiveness. Unable to endure it, I finally fell ill that harsh winter. As I lay dying, I heard Wei Lan weeping, Sister, had I been reborn just a few years earlier, I would never have become entangled with Li Ming. But fate reborn me on our wedding day. It was too late. I couldn't bear being a widow again, so I had to take your husband. I knew he was a good man, especially kind to his wife. Don't blame me. Blame fate's injustice, it was me reborn, not you. I'm sorry. This lifetime, as she wished, fate proved just. I too reborn on the day of the exchange wedding. I would never again show mercy, nor let a moment's mistake ruin my entire life. Before all the guests, I flung open the bridal veil. My mother's face paled. She dared not call my name, only watching helplessly as I shouted wrong bride. And leapt onto the crossbeam of the Xie family's wedding palanquin. I stomped down hard. The palanquin crashed to the ground. Caught off guard, Wei Lan tumbled out. Xia Tingyu instinctively turned to catch her. I drew my hairpin and struck his wrist and Wei Lan's knee. Both cried out in pain. Wei Lan fell to her knees, disheveled. I stood before her, bearing the full force of that kneel. In my past life, she feared I'd haunt her after dying unjustly, so she refused to kneel and keep vigil for me. Even on the day she had to attend my funeral, she wore peachwood charms all over her body and hid behind Mother. Wei Lan, this kneel is what you owe me. I pressed down on her shoulders, forcing her to stay down. Mother cried out in shock and anger, Wei Changfeng. I pretended not to hear, using my inner strength to shatter the wedding gongs and horns. Silence fell, leaving only my voice echoing in their ears. Sister, after much thought, I still find this arranged marriage unsuitable. Since you cannot bear to part with either family, I shall simply not marry. Choose whichever you wish. I withdraw. How laughable. The Li family is prestigious, the Xie family is noble. Neither would tolerate her pickiness. Wei Lan stared at me in horror. But she quickly realized the swap had been exposed, pleading for retraction was futile. Her urgent task now was to steady her intended groom. It's not like that, Xia Lang. She protested. Don't listen to her nonsense. Wei Lan lowered her eyes, a mix of shame and timidity, half concealing her face with her wedding fan. Though I did not exchange marriage contracts with my husband, I boarded the wrong bridal sedan only to marry the right man. How is this not a match made in heaven? With a few deft words, she turned the deliberate swap into a case of mistaken bridal sedan, a plot twist straight out of a street vendor romance novel. The tense atmosphere instantly eased, and the onlookers couldn't help but smile. Only Xia Tingyu remained unmoved, the newlywed glow vanishing from his eyes. He glanced at Wei Lan and me, his gaze icy. There is no such thing as a heaven-ordained match. Only human-made ill-fated unions. Wei Lan's beautiful eyes instantly filled with tears. She tried to speak, but someone else, more heartbroken and less able to hold back, beat her to it. Her former lover, Li Ming, rushed forward, gripping her wrist and asking desperately, Lan? What did you say? Didn't you promise to marry me long ago? Did someone force you? I'll protect you, don't be afraid. His words were filled with genuine emotion. I led the applause. Bravo! Guests and onlookers had long since surrounded us in layers upon layers. Those outside couldn't see what we were doing, so they instinctively joined the applause from those in front. Before Li Ming could finish his declaration, waves of applause and cheers erupted throughout the scene. Li Ming's face flushed crimson. Wei Lan nearly fainted from anger. She hadn't expected Li Ming to be so shameless, laying bare their private affair. For a moment, she didn't know how to smooth things over. Frantic, she whispered, Young General, control yourself, while desperately seeking help from Xia Tingyu. Xia Lang, I have already left with you. I have already boarded your family's wedding sedan. As long as Xia Tingyu was still willing to take her away, this farce could end. All eyes followed her gaze, fixating on the two grooms. Xia Tingyu remained silent. The ever-admired third-place scholar Xia likely faced such an embarrassing situation for the first time. No matter how noble he was, he wouldn't defend anyone but himself. His lips pressed into a straight line. Even with forced restraint, faint traces of collapse flickered at his eyes and brows. Xia Tingyu took an imperceptible step back. The guests surrounding them from all sides took an equally subtle step forward. Ears pricked up, eyes darting wildly. Xia Tingyu couldn't move an inch, forced to stand with us as the entire crowd watched the spectacle unfold. Under these stares, the Wei family's reputation was ruined. So were the Li and Xia families. But so what? If not now, it would be ruined tonight when Li Ming exposed me. Better to let it all boil over here, everyone caught up in the chaos. I might as well take a bite while it's hot. You wretched child. As the farce escalated, Mother clutched her forehead and cried out. Wei Lan reacted swiftly, shaking off Li Ming and rushing toward her mother, wailing Mother. Here we go again. I knew the moment Mother touched Wei Lan's hand, Wei Lan would start her lament. In this scene, she'd say, Mother, it's all my fault for spoiling my sister. I shouldn't have agreed to Changfeng's proposal to exchange brides. Mother, please don't be angry with her. Mother would weakly echo, it's all my fault for damaging my body giving birth to her, leaving me no strength to raise her properly. Then she'd close her eyes and faint. Whenever these mother and daughter faced an unsolvable problem, they'd stage this play. Half accusation, half threat. They'd wait for me to rush over, guilt-ridden and flustered, to support mother, summon the household physician, and accept blame for sins not mine. Back when father was still alive, their schemes mostly revolved around petty financial matters, excessive household spending, unequal treatment of sisters. A little crying and fussing, and the matter was settled. Their performance wasn't particularly skillful. They succeeded every time only because I loved my mother and my elder sister, willing to be coerced by their crude act. But now, the only blood ties left are the blood flowing through my veins. My father, who believed I was not at fault, has also passed away from illness. This play no longer needs to be performed to its conclusion. This time, I beat Wei Lan to supporting mother, pinching her philtrum hard. Mother! I cried out. It's all my fault for always obeying my elder sister. I shouldn't have agreed to the arranged marriage. Mother, don't be angry with her. Her half-closed eyes snapped wide open. No. She tried to protest. I pressed the pressure point at her throat just in time. Sleep, mother. Good night. By the time Wei Lan approached, there was no room left for her to act. She snapped, enough, Wei Changfeng. I know you resent that I grew up by mother's side, raised by her, excelling in music, chess, calligraphy, and painting, everything surpassing you. I spun mother into Wei Lan's arms with a wild goose turn, cutting her off. Yes, you're better than me. When you were playing men like dogs, I was still just waving my big gun around. Right, little general? Li Ming hadn't even reacted yet. The Li family's wedding entourage was already furious, pushing through the crowd to teach me a lesson. Taking advantage of their rage, I lunged forward, snatching the reins from the attendant holding Li Ming's horse. I swung myself onto the saddle. The horse whinnied and struggled. But it couldn't break free from me. Gripping the reins, I held destiny itself. As long as I didn't let go, it would ultimately submit beneath me. I galloped over the heads of the crowd. Such a fine steed still needs a man to lead it? How can such incompetence deserve to marry me? Or even be worthy of my scheming to secure a new husband? Ridiculous! I looked down from above. I saw Wei Lan's face as white as paper. I saw Li Ming, humiliated and filled with grief and fury. I saw Xia Tingyu gazing enviously at me and my horse, as if she too longed to escape. Ha ha ha. I slapped the horse's flank and galloped toward the city gate. Father taught me from childhood, once the act is done, run fast. Otherwise, once mother had me dragged down by the guards, I'd be finished. At first, I faintly heard someone calling Wei Lan's name. She seemed to have fainted too. Later, only the call of freedom remained. Long Wind, like my name, shields me as I journey north. In my past life, this wedding marked the beginning of Wei Lan and my destinies diverging to opposite ends. This lifetime, I could finally live the life I desired, far from the mire and the rotten people. Yeah, right. No sooner had I gained a foothold in the northern lands than Li Ming arrived. I thought that since he hadn't married me this time, he wouldn't come to the frontier. But he came anyway, just like in my past life, alone on horseback, bringing nothing. Rumor has it he sought an imperial decree for his wife. Amid that chaotic wedding, Li Ming defied the gossip and married Wei Lan on the spot. His mother, unable to resist him, reluctantly forced my mother to announce publicly that my outburst at the wedding stemmed from resentment towards Xia Tingyu, not the marriage between the Li and Wei families. For Li Ming's sake, she would do everything possible to protect Wei Lan's reputation. Given the circumstances, my mother naturally had no choice but to comply. Yet she also didn't want to completely alienate Xia Tingyu. So she declared that I had defied my elders and insisted on eloping. To show remorse, she was willing to disown me, and from that day forward, I would no longer be a member of the Wei family. Who would have thought that when she went to the Xia residence to apologize, the door remained shut? Xia Tingyu responded from afar with a single line, "Madam, had you known this day would come, why did you act as you did?" This remark was quite telling. While seemingly addressed to me, the subject was actually Lady Wei, not me, Wei Changfeng. The guests who attended the wedding banquet that day immediately embellished the story, spreading the rumor that I had refused the arranged marriage. The entire capital began speculating that Wei Lan's unilateral change of bride had driven me to desperate measures. After all, this uproar brought me no benefit whatsoever. Now, forget noble families, even humble households wouldn't dare propose to a fierce woman like me. Madame Li's scheme had backfired. Not only did it fail to clear Wei Lan's name, but it dragged Li Ming into the mess as well. In the capital, Li Ming heard whispers daily, "Look, that's the young General Li whom the second wife of the Wei family refused to marry, even at the cost of her own ruin." After their wedding, not a single noble family in Chang'an invited him or Wei Lan to their banquets. How could Li Ming, a pampered young master raised in luxury, endure such humiliation? This time, fleeing home to the frontier, he sought to earn an imperial decree for Wei Lan, and for himself, some tangible military merit. Li Ming harbored deep resentment toward me. From the moment we met, he hurled scornful barbs, accusing me of disloyalty and disrespect. "Did you ever consider before causing this uproar that your actions would drive Lan to despair?" I looked at him as if he were a fool. "So if I married you as Lan wished, and she married Xia Tingyu, would that satisfy you? Are you willing to hand Lan over to someone else? Wouldn't you cause a scene?" 3 questions in a row, no matter how he phrased them, I had the upper hand. Li Ming fell silent. Given his hot-tempered nature, he'd cause a scene not just at the wedding banquet, but all the way to the imperial throne. I clapped my hands leisurely, smiling sweetly. "With the border town's poor communication, I hadn't realized you'd been so thoroughly disgraced. Thanks for delivering the news." Li Ming's face turned crimson and green with rage. He stammered, You. For ages, unable to form a coherent response. Pressing my advantage, I delivered the final blow. "Besides, a weakling like you isn't worth my time. I'll make a scene no matter what." With that, I seized his throat with one hand and pinned him to the ground before he could react. Li Ming. After a moment of stunned silence, he shrieked, "That doesn't count. That doesn't count. You ambushed me." I forced him to stand, making him hold himself up with one hand. Li Ming kept getting knocked down, time and again, until the sand beneath him formed a human-shaped crater. Lying there, he questioned his entire existence. Perhaps with his feet off the ground, his love-blinded mind shut down, and his rational intelligence regained control. He finally admitted that even if the truth had come out later, it wouldn't have made things better. From the moment Wei Lan decided to switch brides, it was inevitable that someone's reputation would be ruined. The only question was whether it would be me or Wei Lan. Love had blinded him, refusing to accept this truth. His beloved was not the flawless moon he imagined. Li Ming lowered his head, no longer daring to speak harsh words to me. But it wasn't his willingness to bow his head that would make me roll with the punches and coddle him. This was no longer Chang'an, where I was shackled at every turn. Here, I was not the silent, coarse second Lady Wei, but the young general revered by all. I kicked Li Ming without mercy. "Get up. Sleeping isn't allowed here." Li Ming soon discovered that disrespecting me made his life here unbearable. His title of general was inherited, granting him a rank higher than everyone else. In theory, he could command the winds and rains here. But in reality, he couldn't even muster a single soldier. Unlike Wei Lan, who was raised in the capital by her mother, I was taken to the frontier by my father the moment I was born. Yellow sand was my cradle. I heard every soldier sing me battle hymns as lullabies. By the time I could walk, I learned how to tend to soldiers' wounds. By the time I could wield a blade, I learned how to fight alongside them on the battlefield. Now, most of them have long since been buried here. Those who remain hold their ground, waiting for the day they might reunite with old comrades in battle. The people here are not only my father's former men, but my own kin and comrades in arms. Knowing I'd been wronged, nearly forced to marry this weakling who couldn't out-argue or outfight me, no one would give him the time of day. When he arrived alone on horseback, Li Ming thought himself a hero from a storybook. He imagined the tale's ending, returning with gold, silver, and power to present to the wife waiting at home. But reality was cruel. Before he could even begin his quest, he was already disgraced and penniless. He had fled to the frontier after a bitter quarrel with his mother. He carried little silver, and by the time he reached here, he had pawned nearly all his jewelry. Were it not for his noble status, no one here would dare starve him to death, and he would be even more destitute. I didn't spare him either, Li Ming. Only soldiers and war horses eat free rations here. Idle men of wealth and privilege are unworthy of food bought with blood. Li Ming was too ashamed to speak. The next day, he led his horse into the military camp. He swallowed his pride, mingling with the common soldiers to do the dirtiest, hardest labor. Fearing I might sabotage him, he kept his distance whenever he saw me. He actually showed some backbone. But he was overthinking it. I simply didn't have the time to constantly deal with him. In my past life, the northern barbarians breached the pass around this very time. The garrison and civilians fought desperately, yet the nearby troops, for some reason, delayed their reinforcements. By the time word reached the capital and the court dispatched reinforcements, it was already too late. The northern barbarians had gained unstoppable momentum, sweeping southward and plundering 14 cities. The garrison died for their country, common folk perished defending their homes. The young and strong fell in battle, the old and young were slaughtered. 14 cities, utterly depopulated. I didn't know when the Great War would come, nor did I believe one more soldier like me could change the course of events. But I was born here, and it was my duty to defend it to the death. When Li Ming came to find me, I was reorganizing the scouts, ordering them to report any northern D movements immediately. Wei Changfeng, General, you won't give me a proper assignment. Could you help me? Hey! Scouts are great. I want that job. I ignored him. In my past life, Li Ming died in this very war. Though I never cared much for him, he once stopped my mother from beating me, brought me back to the Li household, and showed me a shred of kindness. I couldn't just watch him walk into certain death. Besides, a useless fool like him serves no purpose here except to add another name to the casualty list. Li Ming, return to Chang'an. This isn't a place for you to play around. Li Ming grew frantic. Wei Changfeng, I genuinely want to do something meaningful here. I ignored him and walked out of the tent. Li Ming followed close behind, pleading loudly, Wei Changfeng, I know I was wrong. Though you are a woman, you possess my late father's spirit and the talent of a commander. The remarriage was Lan's fault. Can I apologize to you on her behalf? Forgive me, don't dismiss me over this. I've always been quick on my feet, perfect for scouting. Wei Changfeng, Little General Wei, Wei heir. No, Madam Wei, I beg you. Have mercy. Elan? I turned, meeting Wei Lan's stunned expression. Li Ming's pleading expression turned awkward. Wei Lan's eyes went blank for a moment before turning deathly pale. Li Ming! What are you doing? I risked everything to come to this dangerous place for you. And what are you doing? Hanging around my sister? Me. You're like a ghost, sis. I'm not circling her. I just want her to assign me some real work. Li Ming instinctively explained in a conciliatory tone. Wei Lan didn't believe him. She cried out, Wei Changfeng is just a woman without official rank. But you hold the hereditary position of deputy commander, a proper second-rank official. Why would she need to assign you anything? Husband, even if you're making excuses, at least put some effort into them. Her delicate frame trembled slightly, her eyes filled with reproach, presenting a heartbroken yet stubbornly coaxing expression. And so I understood. She never truly believed Li Ming would fall for someone else, she was just casually using me to stir up jealousy. After all, when a man revels in a woman's devotion, he's never stingy with affection. She even lavished praise on his noble status and position in her words, making him feel even more pleased. But she didn't know that lately, Li Ming had heard the terms hereditary official and second-class junior rank far too often. The soldiers kept shouting things like second-class junior rank and hereditary official. And how enviable! While keeping their distance from him, isolating him. Li Ming had struggled hard to gain acceptance in the camp and was now hypersensitive, particularly loathing when others used these terms to praise him. He reacted like a dog struck by a stone, yelping and stamping his feet. What's so great about a junior second rank? What's so great about an inherited position? In the camp, whoever has the skills is the boss. Back home, mother wouldn't let me touch weapons or war horses, afraid I'd hurt myself. I finally escaped just to earn military merit through my own hard work, like my ancestors did. Wei Lan was startled by his sudden outburst and fell silent. Seeing her quiet, Li Ming grew even more furious. He snapped coldly. When you wanted to remarry me off, wasn't it because you thought I was just a spoiled brat relying on my parents, unworthy of trust? Now that I've grown, you should be pleased. I raised an eyebrow. Well, he's finally grown a brain. Li Ming, just wait. I'll earn you an imperial decree. Me. How is he still love-struck? Ugh. Not wanting to watch this mismatched pair, I pushed past them and walked away. But then I spotted someone in plain robes. Xia Tingyu stood motionless nearby, watching us with a cold expression. Me. Must have offended the stars today, everything and everyone in the capital seems bent on tormenting me. Not only did I get dragged into that couple's flirting, but now I'm the spectacle. My temper flared. Didn't you learn the principle of don't look at what you shouldn't see, Magistrate Xia? I made up my mind, if he said he had, I'd call him a hypocrite who'd wasted his education on gentlemanly principles. If he said he hadn't, I'd call him a hypocrite for not learning that much. Xia Tingyu chose not to answer. He pretended not to catch the sting in my words, stepping before Li Ming and extending his hand. Your noble lady owes me 30 taels for travel expenses. Kindly settle the debt. Me and Li Ming, huh? Wait, buddy, you came here with Wei Lan? Seeing the handsome third-place scholar, Li Ming's love-struck brain retreated. He silently turned to Wei Lan. Wei Lan, fully prepared, showed no surprise. We happened to meet Xia Langjun while leaving the capital and discovered our paths aligned. As a young woman traveling alone, I naturally worry about safety. I hired Xia Langjun to escort me part of the way. She curtsied to Xia Tingyu with graceful poise, then turned to give Li Ming a playful glare. Husband, I was so worried about you that I rushed here without even bringing a maid. Convinced, Li Ming's face softened with emotion. His instinct was to pay Xia Tingyu and send him on his way. He fumbled in his sleeve, then paused. His hand drifted to the silk pouch, and he fell silent. Lord Xia, I left home in such haste. I didn't bring much silver. This time, Li Ming truly blushed. He wasn't a registered soldier stationed here, so he received no monthly salary. His pockets were genuinely emptier than his face. I pulled out a silver ingot, balancing it on my fingertip as I tossed it up and down. Li Ming's evasive gaze followed my movements. He tentatively asked, Young General Wei? Wei Lan's smile vanished. She couldn't help but glare at Li Ming. We don't need it. We don't need handouts from a rejected daughter of the Wei clan. Li Ming frowned, glancing at me, but ultimately refrained from arguing with Wei Lan in front of everyone. I smiled, wiped the silver coin with my sleeve, and blew on it. I didn't intend to give it. Why do certain people feel such possessiveness over money in others' hands? They even decide how others should spend it? I rarely lose in either words or actions. Wei Lan trembled with fury. Li Ming didn't want to see us argue further. He steeled himself to negotiate with Xia Tingyu. Minister Xia, consider this money a debt I owe you for now. I'll repay it upon our return to the capital. How does that sound? The last trace of gentleness vanished from Xia Tingyu's face. He exhaled deeply, his thin lips curving into a faint, ambiguous smile. I'd seen that look before, the expression scholars wore before delivering a scathing rebuke. I took a step back, distancing myself. Sure enough, Xia Tingyu unleashed his fury. Your marriage is truly a match made in heaven. One clings shamelessly to my carriage, forcing me to bring her searching for her husband. The other, a noble marquis's son, demands an IOU for 30 taels. When I present this meager IOU at your noble doorstep someday, won't I be accused of nitpicking over trifles? How calculating of you, young masterly. Xia Tingyu clapped his hands. Smack! Smack! It landed on Li Ming's face with even greater effect than the fan had. Wei Lan tried to stop Xia Tingyu, pulling a golden hairpin from her own hair and thrusting it into his hand. Xia. Xia Lane Jun. Xia Tingyu swiftly dodged her, raising his eyebrows slightly. Oh dear. After berating Li Ming, now he was about to berate Wei Lan. I've been officially appointed to office. Would it be too much to ask Mrs. Li to address me as Your Excellency? What's with all this young Master Xia and young lady? Mrs. Li may care little for her reputation, but the Xia family still values its name. Oh, I forgot, the Xia family's good name vanished long ago. I shan't name the culprit, everyone here knows who it is. Wei Lan was stunned by the barrage of criticism. Throughout their journey, Xia Tingyu had treated her with uncharacteristic gentleness, showing no sign of harboring resentment. She had even privately admired Xia Tingyu, thinking he truly lived up to his reputation as a gentleman, noble and magnanimous. Little did she expect this trap waiting for her. Her face twisted into a pleading expression. Xia Tingyu showed no mercy, turning his head away with obvious disdain to avoid her gaze. I've made it clear, I value my reputation. Whether Madame Li pawned her assets or borrowed money from others, I only accepted the agreed-upon 30 taels of silver. I would not accept any jewelry or personal belongings. He enunciated each word deliberately, emphasizing the phrase any. Not a single coin more, not a single coin less. Wei Lan, who had grown up surrounded by adoration, had never been so publicly humiliated, especially by a man. Unable to bear it, she covered her face and wept. Truth be told, her tears were quite beautiful. A branch of pear blossoms, spring rain clinging to them. Xia Tingyu showed her no mercy. He pressed his attack relentlessly. Why are you crying, Madame Li? The Xia family spared no expense for a lavish wedding procession to spare the Wei family's daughter any hardship. What a farce! The Xia family didn't shed a single tear. His tone was flat, tinged with curiosity, yet deeply insulting. Wei Lan's sobs grew louder. But she dared not mention the arranged marriage. She could only point at the 30 taels and stammer, Lord Xia, rest assured. I will repay the money. Wah, I will repay you. Xia Tingyu, promptly, thank you. He swept his sleeves with a leisurely grace, still radiating the aura of a noble gentleman under the moonlit breeze. I inwardly gasped, suspecting he'd resolved to exact revenge on Wei Lan, the root of all this, since the wedding day. 30 taels were merely a convenient excuse for him to act. I even doubted Wei Lan and Li Ming could have escaped this ordeal had they repaid the money on the spot. What a bamboo-like gentleman. More like a black-hearted lotus with a venomous tongue and a vengeance-fueled heart. I was still grumbling inwardly. Xia Tingyu turned back, his voice gentle. Young General Wei, might we step aside for a moment? Huh? He's coming for me? If I'd known this guy was so sharp-tongued, I wouldn't have let my temper get the better of me and said that one thing. I eyed him cautiously. You've got the wrong person, Minister Xia. There's no young General Wei here. Soldiers in the barracks often teased me affectionately with that nickname, but the court never actually granted me a military title. Xia Tingyu smoothly adjusted his approach. Madame Wei, might we speak privately? There's no Second Lady Wei here either. Second Lady Wei had been disowned by the Wei family. What business is it of mine, Wei Changfeng, that you seek her? Xia Tingyu. He patiently continued, then might I speak with Wei Changfeng? Me, no. Xia Tingyu. He shot Wei Lan and me a meaningful glance. Very well. Then I shall wait until Lady Wei has time to converse with me again. It won't be long. With Wei Lan's arrival, Li Ming could no longer stay at the main camp. The good news was that unlike Li Ming, Wei Lan hadn't come penniless. The funds she brought were even sufficient to purchase a small courtyard within the city. The bad news was that when Li Ming asked Wei Lan why she needed him to repay her expenses if she had silver, that day, he had truly lost all face. Wei Lan explained that if she settled privately with Xia Tingyu, Li Ming might later suspect their past association. Wei Lan said, since we've united our families, I naturally hope we'll trust each other completely. Li Ming relayed this to me. His purpose was to convey that he saw the arranged marriage as a momentary lapse on Wei Lan's part. Now that they had reconciled, he felt there was no need for me and Wei Lan to remain at odds. I misunderstood you, Li Ming sighed. You are a remarkable young woman. There was truly no need to sever our familial ties. He sincerely expressed his willingness to help mend our sisterly relationship, including reaching out to my mother on his end. I asked sincerely, if Wei Lan had money, why was her first reaction to pull the hairpin from her hair and give it to Xia Tingyu? Li Ming fell deep in thought. I suggested, she must have seen your distress and acted impulsively. Li Ming. After a long silence, he rose and resumed practicing his martial arts techniques. He trained even harder than when sparring with me, as if determined to defeat something. I said no more. Wei Lan and her kind were merely minor interludes in my life. My primary concern now was preparing for a military drill, a defensive exercise. After father's passing, his former deputy commander, Yehu, had become the commander here. As a commoner, I had no authority to involve myself in military affairs, let alone command drills. Uncle Yi specifically granted me the role of military advisor. Standing before the training platform, he watched me issue commands, his gaze mirroring the way he once looked at my father. When I first returned, Uncle Yi thought I'd come home out of grievance, his hair standing on end with fury. He was about to write to Mother immediately. But the moment I landed, I rushed into the barracks demanding to accompany him on his rounds, constantly proposing new requirements. That's when he understood. He asked, "Have you heard news?" I nodded. He asked, "Is it reliable?" I nodded. He said, "Good." 3 sentences sealed our mutual trust in life and death. This was the tacit understanding between comrades in arms. The frontier had a tradition of scheduled drills, typically held in spring and summer, seasons when the northern barbarians seldom attacked. Late spring was upon us now. Following tradition, I divided the soldiers into 2 groups, one simulating the northern barbarians attacking the city, the other simulating our forces defending it. The difference was this: I extended the required defense time again and again. Through repeated drills, I needed to observe the capabilities and limits of my officers and soldiers, adjust strategies, and prolong our survival time. Because I knew this time, on the real battlefield, there would be no reinforcements arriving in time. Our only option is to hold out one more day, then another. Li Ming volunteered to join our drills. True to his words, he was a natural scout. Attentive, he could spot enemy tracks early, swift on his feet, he avoided capture and death. Uncle Yi and I gradually entrusted him with more critical tasks. As the drills intensified, he returned home later and later. This likely caused friction with Wei Lan. Each time I encountered him, his face was clouded with gloom. Several days later, Wei Lan actually appeared at the camp gates, claiming she was waiting for her husband to finish his shift. A military encampment is no place for outsiders to linger. After standing there briefly, the guards escorted her away. Wei Lan frowned. "I am Li Ming's wife." The gate guard remained unmoved, blocking her path. Wei Lan shouted, "I am Lady Li. Do you hear me? I am Lady Li." The guard retorted, "Don't mention Li. Even if you were the wife of Zhao, Qian, or Sun, it wouldn't matter." Ignoring the guard's sarcasm, Wei Lan grew even more furious. She snapped, "I am the legitimate daughter of the Wei family, the daughter of Wei Shoshan, the eldest daughter-in-law of the Marquis of Guangbing, and the wife of Li Ming. How dare you block my way?" The guard, conflicted and unwilling to use force, discreetly signaled a colleague to report her presence inside. Coincidentally, Uncle Yi and I were patrolling near Li Ming's formation. Learning his wife had come to the barracks demanding he relieve duty, Li Ming flushed crimson with embarrassment. He lowered his head, unable to meet his comrades' astonished and mocking gazes. Uncle Yi spoke first, "Since she's here, we should go see her." Li Ming strode swiftly toward the entrance. Uncle Yi tugged me along behind. "Me, what's this?" Uncle Yi puffed out his beard, a mischievous grin spreading across his face. "After all these years, let's see what kind of fine daughter your sister-in-law has raised. Compare her to the one we've raised, humph. Wei Lan and I are twins. Back then, Mother gave birth to us in the capital. They say she was weakened by childbirth. Barely recovered, she claimed she couldn't raise 2 daughters and had servants send me to Father. Father and Uncle Yi raised me. Only when Father's old wounds flared up and he retired from the front lines, and I reached marriageable age, did our family reunite in the capital. Wei Lan had never met Uncle Yi, but recognized his identity from his attire. Before Li Ming could speak with his usual stern expression, she complained in a familiar tone, "Uncle Yi, we're both father's daughters. Why do you let Changfeng come and go freely in the barracks, but not me?" Her manner was that of a sweet, innocent little daughter. Uncle Yi frowned in confusion. "How can you compare yourself to her?" Wei Lan's smile froze. "She gains entry here because she possesses Wei Hu's valor and Liang Ping's ingenuity. Because she is Wei Changfeng. Not because of whose daughter or wife she is. Madame Wei has spoiled you rotten. All you know is squabbling with your sister, yet you possess no real talent." Having finally vented his pent-up frustration in one breath, Uncle Yi visibly felt relieved. He triumphantly raised 2 fingers behind his back and waved them at me. As if to say, "Humph, while she has her mother's favoritism in the capital, here too, someone is willing to disregard seniority and show you partiality." Before Wei Lan could cry from the scolding, Uncle Yi excused himself, saying he had business to attend to, and galloped back to camp. Running away after a scolding, a time-honored virtue. I chuckled inwardly. Having been so thoroughly humiliated by her father's old friend, Wei Lan's face turned as pale as gold leaf. She clenched her palms tightly, tears welling in her eyes. "Why is someone as formidable as Wei Changfeng still here? Can't you see we're trying to talk?" She wanted me gone. I immediately steadied myself. "Just watching your little drama, relaxing a bit. You know, people as capable as us carry a lot of pressure normally." Wei Lan couldn't hold it in anymore. Tears spilled over. In our few recent confrontations, she'd shed more tears from hurt and humiliation than in all the previous decades combined. I couldn't quite name the feeling in my heart, somewhat complex, yet gradually losing its appeal. From the moment we were raised apart, she and I were never meant to be on the same path. What difference did it make whether I could defeat her? I suppressed my smile and offered her one final, sincere piece of advice. "Wei Lan, if you don't want people laughing at you, just live your own life. Stop staring at others all the time." I turned and walked away. Behind me, Li Ming's voice drifted faintly. He asked wearily, "Wei Lan, have you had enough of this? You say you love me, yet why do you never respect my ambitions and aspirations?" Li Ming and Wei Lan erupted into an unprecedented argument. The very next day, he moved back to the barracks. I worried Wei Lan might continue causing trouble here. But she remained unexpectedly quiet. The border town was too small. Soon, I encountered her by chance within the city walls. She wore a hooded cape as she hurried through the alleyways, glancing left and right as if searching for something. Spotting my gaze, she looked at me warily. As we passed, she warned, "I've heeded your words and focused on my own life. I hope you'll do the same, don't interfere with me." I knew Wei Lan well. For a noble woman like her, public exposure was the greatest taboo. Not only would she avoid alleyways, but even on main roads she'd wear a veil and floor-length skirt, with maids crowding around to shield her figure. What could possibly be worth this for her? I recalled Wei Lan's account from my previous life. She had been reborn on the day of her arranged marriage. Knowing Li Ming would die in battle and she would become a widow, she insisted on remarrying Xia Tingyu at all costs. This lifetime, she still proposed the swap, proving she had reincarnated again. Then why, after I disrupted the wedding and she married Li Ming, did she not only send him to the frontier but come herself? She wasn't the type to choose death alongside her husband. In her perception of the past life, the one where she married Li Ming and I married Xia Tingyu, what exactly happened in this city? And what did she know? Then there was Xia Tingyu. He'd just been appointed to a capital post, deeply favored by the new emperor and the regent prince. Logically, this was the time he should have stayed in the court to build his political achievements. Why did he travel thousands of miles to this place? My gut tells me these answers matter. Both for this city and for me. I kept my wits about me, deciding to probe Li Ming first. This fool was completely duped by Wei Lan. Not only did he know nothing of her whereabouts, but he was utterly convinced Wei Lan had come seeking him either because she couldn't bear to part with him or couldn't stand his mother. Ha! He may not know Wei Lan, but he certainly knows his mother well. Recalling how Li's mother had tormented me in my past life, I felt a pang of sympathy. Yet despite enduring several humiliations, Wei Lan never breathed a word to Li Ming. She acted in secret. This showed she believed her undertaking was monumental. So monumental she deemed it above her husband, even above her own life. I thought of Xia Tingyu. When he declared so confidently that I would meet with him, did he foresee this day? Suppressing the stifling feeling of being manipulated, I swung myself onto my horse. A strong woman knows when to yield and when to stand her ground. Not only would I meet with him, I would go straight to his doorstep and drag him out. I would wring something out of him. The small courtyard rented by the ever-calculating magistrate Xia was remarkably inconspicuous, bordering on dilapidated. The vermilion paint on the gate had been stripped away by wind and rain, its surface riddled with ant-gnawed marks. I grasped the door knocker and tapped it twice. Clang, the gate crashed to the ground with a thunderous clatter. Xia Tingyu was sipping tea in the courtyard. He didn't seem surprised to see me. "You're here." All right, when he saw the door knocker in my hand and the fallen door on the ground, he did look a bit startled. His expression twisted for a moment before he lowered his head, hiding his face behind his teacup. "Since you knew I was coming, Magistrate Xia, you weren't planning to extort me, were you?" I raised the door knocker. What a piece of junk. I swear on my ancestors' honor, I didn't use any force. Xia Tingyu. Madame Wei still prefers to strike first. He rose, took the door knocker from my hand, and offered an apology. This small courtyard hasn't been repaired in years. Several parts are dilapidated. I apologize for startling you. As he spoke, he gestured for me to sit. Another cup of tea already sat on the table, its fragrance wafting gently, the temperature just right. He really did know I was coming. My brows furrowed. I knew I couldn't let this man dictate the pace of our conversation. The more anxious I felt, the more I refused to be led by the nose. Xia Tingyu casually placed the door knocker on the table, adopting a posture ready for a detailed discussion. "Let's talk about Wei Lan first." I grinned cheekily. "Let's discuss the door knocker first." Xia Tingyu paused. As a rising star in the imperial court, why hasn't Magistrate Xia acquired a residence befitting his status? Xia Tingyu met my gaze for a moment. I remained unmoved. A flicker of embarrassment crossed Xia Tingyu's eyes, his ears turning slightly crimson. Back then, the Wei family proposed that the Li and Xia families hold their wedding ceremonies on the same day. The Li family was distinguished and wealthy, while the Xia family, aware of our own poverty, still did our best to prepare. His tone was tactful, stopping just short of revealing more. I understood. Damn it, why did I have to ask that question? There were many ways to interrupt his flow, and I'd unwittingly chosen the most unreasonable one. It began when Wei Lan suggested sisters marrying together for good fortune. Mother, without much thought, discussed it with the Xia family. To show respect for the brides, the Xia family agreed to every demand the Wei family made. The Li family's wedding procession was second only to the imperial court in grandeur. The pressure on the Xia family to match it on the same day was unimaginable. I had the matchmaker inform the Xia family that as long as everything followed proper etiquette, there was no need for competition. The matchmaker relayed that the Xia family assured me not to worry, they wouldn't overreach. But the eldest and second branches would pool their resources and efforts to ensure nothing essential was lacking. They would strive for even greater refinement in other aspects, vowing not to disgrace the second Lady Wei marrying into their family. Judging by the wedding, they truly kept their promise. At the time, I merely admired the Xia family's strict and upright household traditions. Now, however, I cannot help but feel a pang of guilt. I should never have agreed to marry both sisters off together in the first place. It needlessly invited so many complications later on. The Xia family has now lost both their fortune and their daughter. I bear responsibility for this. I'm sorry. This is the Wei family's fault. It's our fault. We're sorry to you, and we're sorry to the Xia family. Do you have paper and pen? Calculate the losses. We need to discuss how to. I glanced up at Xia Tingyu and noticed him discreetly tucking the door ring into his sleeve. I didn't call him out, pretending not to see. Xia Tingyu hadn't truly intended to continue discussing the wedding or the losses with me anyway. The white-robed gentleman shed that last trace of bashfulness, reverting to the cool, sharp-witted Magistrate Xia. Xiaoting cut straight to the point. The situation is urgent, so I'll cut to the chase. Lady Wei's visit concerns Wei Lan and the Northern D. I've heard the military camp has been conducting drills repeatedly these days. Oh, still trying to draw me out. I said nothing, only sipped my tea. I couldn't tell Xiaoting the Northern D were about to invade. Because I couldn't explain how I knew their military intelligence, much less reveal my rebirth. Even if in another lifetime, he was the husband Wei Lan described as treating me exceptionally well. But in this life, we are merely strangers who've had 2 unpleasant encounters. Xiaoting possesses too much information unknown to me, and his cunning borders on the supernatural. If possible, I'd rather we weren't seated across from each other at a tea table, but beside an interrogation bench. Then, whatever I asked, he would tell. Seeing my silence, Xiaoting changed the subject. Don't be nervous, Lady Wei. Let's return to Wei Lan. To be perfectly honest, that day you encountered Wei Lan in the city, that was my doing. I saw you had someone tailing her afterward, so I knew you'd come find me. After saying this, he paused, waiting for my questions. Me. Damn it, I hate people who beat around the bush. Don't be nervous. Isn't that exactly what you're trying to make me do, Magistrate Xia? I stood up, drew the long sword at my waist, and pressed it against Xiaoting's neck. I may be nervous, but my blade never is. Xia, I advise you to stop playing riddles and testing me. My time is precious, and so is your life. Xiaoting froze, then smiled. He clapped his hands, his auspicious phoenix eyes showing no fear. Lady Wei, you're truly remarkable. I intended to lay everything out, but since you're so eager. How about this, we each ask 3 questions. Xiaoting's expression softened. If you prefer not to elaborate, you may answer me with only yes or no. Me. If you want to spill everything, just spill it. Still thinking about trading? I sneered coldly. I knew it, this bastard would never give up information easily unless I offered equal value in return. Fortunately, I deeply understood the truth that madness breaks all rules. It seems Lord Xia has forgotten what kind of person I am. When pushed to the edge, I'm capable of anything. Now, I don't want to know anything. You don't need to answer anymore. You only need to choose death or death. With that, my arm tensed. The blade instantly sliced through the skin, drawing a crimson line across his pale neck. Crimson flowed onto his white robes, blooming like clusters of red plum blossoms. I remained unmoved. Xiaoting's calm gaze gradually clouded with uncertainty, his lashes fluttering. Before the blade sank into flesh and severed his throat, Xiaoting bowed his head. Please sit down, Lady Wei. I'll tell you everything. At the beginning of the month, I received an imperial decree to leave the capital in secret. Just as I exited the city, I encountered Lady Li. Xiaoting, fearing I might press him on the nature of the decree, shot me a nervous glance. I replied, I won't ask what I shouldn't. Xiaoting exhaled in relief. He mentioned hearing rumors about Li Ming leaving home for love, initially suspecting nothing of Wei Lan, assuming it was mere coincidence they traveled the same route. Wei Lan had followed behind him, neither too close nor too far. Even after he noticed her, she refused to leave, instead coyly asking him to escort her along the way. No matter how coldly he refused, she met him with a smile. My lord, just this journey, please accompany me only this far, she pleaded. As if walking this shared path could fulfill her dream of crossing their destined paths. The attendants' gazes grew increasingly suggestive, convinced of Wei Lan's devotion. Xiaoting remained unconvinced. He'd never known youthful infatuation, but he'd seen the smiling glances exchanged between his parents. Gentle, yet resolute. Like water murmuring through the courtyard, where night winds drop petals, and the stream cradles them. But Wei Lan's gaze held only raw desire and ambition. She was a gambler, and he was her carefully chosen bet. She sought to wager something through him. All have desires, the noble-minded govern themselves by virtue, not others. Xiaoting wouldn't condemn Wei Lan for her ambition, but she despised being manipulated by such a person. The arranged marriage was one thing, the situation before her now was another. Xiaoting began probing Wei Lan. A delicate flower raised in seclusion, how could she withstand Xia Tingyu's relentless questioning, both gentle and forceful? After a few probing remarks, Xia Tingyu keenly discerned that neither he nor Li Ming were Wei Lan's sole purpose for this journey. Just then, a secret edict arrived, informing Xia Tingyu that his target was at the frontier, the very same location as Li Ming. Thus, Xia Tingyu feigned being moved by Wei Lan, offering to take her with him. Yet he never relinquished his suspicion of her. He deliberately mocked Wei Lan before us, half serious, half joking, to shatter any lingering hope she might harbor for him. He also bribed Wei Lan's newly hired servant to keep a close watch on her. Gradually, he confirmed that Wei Lan's purpose aligned with his own. Even theoretically, given the nature of palace secrets, Wei Lan could never have known. Xia Tingyu finished speaking and looked at me expectantly. He hadn't given up yet, hoping to catch a hint from my expression. I had been deep in thought, but seeing Magistrate Xia's furtive gaze, I almost laughed. Xia had remarkable insight, not only pinpointing Wei Lan and me with precision, but also enduring his anger to earn 30 taels along the way. Truly a prodigy. Alas, the targets he'd set his sights on, both Wei Lan and I, were reincarnated souls. He couldn't uncover why we knew things we shouldn't through any conventional means. Using Wei Lan as bait, he'd reeled me in, hoping to extract more intelligence. His intentions were sound, his reasoning sound, yet his outcome was doomed to fail. For the clues he provided had already allowed me to piece together the truth. I needed no further conversation with him. In my previous life, while languishing on my sickbed, I heard from a servant that the court had undergone a cataclysmic shift. A woman, once a military prostitute, had simultaneously gained the support of both the civil and military factions. She had beheaded the regent prince, assassinated the new emperor, and ascended the throne herself. Though my illness clouded my senses, this news stirred a flicker of joy within me. A woman ascending to the throne as Phoenix, for her, and for all daughters in this world, it was a good thing. I even dared to dream. I imagined, if the new emperor ascended before I married, and if he were a daughter, might I too be appointed a female general? Might I establish my own household, spared the fate of returning to the capital for marriage? Spared the risk of one misstep sealing my fate forever? Alas, the world holds no room for such what-ifs. By then, I had sunk so low that even the servants who brought me medicine were a favor from Wei Lan. It was said Xia Tingyu had escorted the empress when she was still obscure, aiding her ascent to power, a phoenix's merit. After the empress ascended the throne, she not only bestowed a noble title upon him but also granted his mother an imperial decree of honor. The Xia family basked in favor for a time. Wei Lan would often visit me, recounting how Xia Tingyu had been summoned by the sovereign to offer counsel, or how the Xia family had received yet another imperial gift. Since she came, the Li family could hardly deny me even a bowl of medicine or a servant. But that was the extent of it. After all, Wei Lan never once spoke up to stop the servants as they roughly forced the medicine down my throat. But I didn't care. Mother and Wei Lan destroyed my body and reputation. Uncle Ye's death in battle against the Wei army shattered my last hope. I'd long since lost the will to live, seeking only death. Whatever Wei Lan said to me, I offered no reply. Yet she persisted in coming, as if she could only find peace after seeing me off with her own eyes. The fainter my breath grew, the more her gaze toward me flickered with terror and excitement, like ghostly flames rising from a mass grave. She stared at me, repeating over and over, "Only someone like His Majesty, who could rise to greatness in any lifetime, truly carries the mandate of heaven. But you, a life that can be snatched away, is not truly yours." Her body shook uncontrollably, tears welling in her eyes. Even beasts know to fight for survival. How could I let go of a man destined for greatness? Chung Feng, don't blame me. Don't blame me. After rebirth, I rarely revisited those final moments. The agony of hovering between life and death was unbearable. Watching my own sister suffer in the torment of good and evil, feeling like two souls became ghosts when only one died, that was even more unbearable. I didn't want to be trapped in the past, yet my carelessness led me to overlook such crucial information. Wei Lan knew the Empress would ascend the throne and that Xia Tingyu would have the merit of bringing the phoenix. That's why she was willing to harm me to force a marriage. The birthplaces of emperors during their exile are no secret. In my previous life, I was unaware due to illness, but Wei Lan likely heard of it before my rebirth. If the future empress was here, and Xia Tingyu's mission was to escort her to the capital, then Wei Lan's willingness to sacrifice her dignity to follow him makes perfect sense. Only such staggering fortune would be worth risking one's life for. Further deduction suggests that the imperial decree Xia Tingyu stubbornly refused to reveal likely also pertains to the future empress. They were both searching for someone, yet made no progress. Hence Xia Tingyu grew desperate, luring me into his scheme. Having sorted everything out, I lowered my blade and prepared to leave, taking Xia Tingyu's life with me. Xia Tingyu rose to block my path, his clear, moist eyes flashing with resignation. It seems my elaborate schemes have only served to weave a wedding gown for my lady. Would my lady truly not share a single clue with me? He sighed softly, his gaze brimming as he looked at me, a touch of pitiable sorrow gathering between his brows. He certainly knew how to leverage his looks. Alas, I'd undergone professional training, I would never waver before a beauty trap. I halted my steps. One last look. Xia Tingyu still gazed at me with that sorrowful look. His refined face resembled a mist-shrouded waterway in the Jiangnan region, his skin as pale as a new moon, his waist slender as a willow blade. All right, exchanging a few words with him wouldn't hurt. Of course, this wasn't me succumbing to his beauty. I had my own rhythm. My unauthorized military maneuvers were too conspicuous, arousing Xia Tingyu's suspicion. His opening mention of the northern barbarians proved it. Sent by royal decree, he must possess special intelligence channels. If he reported to the court, it would only invite further complications. If possible, I wished to placate him. I spoke frankly, I know you suspect not only Wei Lan, but me as well. This unauthorized action was not my intention, it was a necessity. I swear, Wei Changfeng has pledged his life to the nation, to the people of this land. He would never betray the heroic spirits who rest here, guarding our borders. You may rest assured on this point, Minister Xia. My words rang out with conviction as I met Xia Tingyu's gaze unwaveringly. Xia Tingyu stood stunned, speechless for a long moment. My lady speaks truly. Whether civil or military, every official must pledge their life to the nation and its people, and to nothing else. Only when the ancestral halls and fields are secured can the imperial palace stand firm. I understand now. Thank you for your guidance, my lady. He bowed deeply before me, his expression gradually easing as if he'd made a firm resolution. Without pausing to consider what I just advised Xia Tingyu, I waved him off casually and spurred my horse toward General Ye's residence. Urgent! 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 I must find the future empress before Xia Tingyu does. It's not about claiming credit for the Phoenix's victory. Rather, barring surprises, she is the crucial piece in the border crisis. If I could prove that Xia Tingyu's imperial orders were connected to her, this place would have long been under the court's scrutiny. Then, what was the truth behind the lack of reinforcements? I dared not dwell on it. But now, the truth was within reach. I told myself there could be no outcome more tragic than my past life. I had no room to retreat. Uncle! Where are the military camp's roster of military prostitutes and daily logs? Bring them here for me to see. Uncle Ye's eyes widened. Go! 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 What nonsense is this brat spouting? Is this something you should be asking? How dare you? I rubbed my hands together. Heh, even if you won't let me be bold, I've been bold many times before. Come on, one more time won't hurt. Uncle Yi. He glared at me, but still got up to fetch the register and daily records. Changfeng, what exactly are you up to these days? Spill it to your uncle. Me, it's not a rebellion, anyway. What are you afraid of? Uncle Ye's forehead veins bulged. He took a deep breath, turned, and was about to grab a stick to beat me. I promptly shoved half the daily logs into his arms. Uncle, don't just stand there. Help me look. My father and Uncle Yi demanded strict discipline from their troops, forbidding the practice of keeping military prostitutes. Those sent by the court were assigned to kitchen or sewing duties, overseen by supervisors who recorded their activities, both to prevent misconduct among the women and to shield them from harassment. Camp life was monotonous, so the daily logs were mostly repetitive and dull. I expected a lengthy search, but upon opening the records from the past 6 months, I immediately spotted something unusual. Even in the most disciplined army, rogue soldiers and troublemakers were inevitable. After a few bowls of wine, they would often seek trouble with the women meant to serve them. When father was alive, I beat many such scoundrels and ordered the overseers to record such incidents truthfully. Since these women were criminals, verbal harassment by soldiers was rarely punished severely, and such incidents occurred with alarming frequency. Yet in the logs from the past 3 months, there were almost no records of women being harassed. The turning point came with a woman named Ayun. 3 months ago, she organized the women to fiercely fight back against several soldiers who frequently harassed them. They stripped the men naked, tied them to the flagpole in the drill ground, and put them on public display. This incident was meticulously recorded by the overseer. Stripped of his clothes, his member was very small, and the women laughed at him. I couldn't help but laugh. Serves them right. Glancing at the sky, the sun had just set, time for the women to finish their work. I changed into my cloth skirt and headed toward their camp tents. Previously preoccupied with fortifications, I hadn't observed them closely. Now, upon closer look, I noticed they truly were different. At the end of the workday, they no longer hurried toward the tents like a flock of sheep, heads bowed to hide their faces. Instead, they moved in clear order, tall, sturdy women on the outer line, slender ones on the inner, chatting and laughing. A slender, tall figure was surrounded by them. That was Ajun. Noticing my gaze, Ajun smiled at me, young general. Yet I stood frozen in place. Only one thought filled my mind. This sister, I feel like I've seen her somewhere before. Ajun invited me into the tent for a chat. She clearly commanded great respect. As soon as we entered, the women parted, making space for us. I stared at Ajun with a complex expression. The resemblance was uncanny. The lotus petal face, willow leaf brows, almond-shaped eyes, even the tiny red mole between her brows was identical. Ajun seemed unfazed by my shock. She poured me a cup of water with a smile. Second Lady Wei, it's been ages since we last met at the hunting grounds. Never imagined we'd cross paths again here. Startled, I leapt from my seat, knocking over the cup she'd offered. Before coming here, I'd surmised that the future empress, before her demotion to military concubine, must have come from a distinguished family. Otherwise, how could she have secured the support of both civil and military officials so swiftly after returning to the capital? But I never imagined the woman before me would be the once exalted Princess Cheng. How could this be? When I left the capital, the eldest princess and the regent prince had only been married a few months. The red silk banners hung throughout the city to celebrate their wedding hadn't even faded yet. At this time, she should have been in the palace, teaching the young new emperor and ruling alongside her husband as the true power behind the throne. Yet, the encounter between the eldest princess and me in the hunting grounds was indeed known only to us. At the time, both of us had strayed from the group while pursuing a white wolf, venturing deep into the hunting grounds. Our eyes met, and we drew our bows simultaneously. One arrow struck the wolf squarely in the forehead, piercing clean through its skull. The other arrow veered slightly, grazing the wolf's head before embedding itself in a nearby tree trunk. The princess frowned in frustration, then burst into laughter, turning to me, impressive. Second Lady Wei, it's yours. Though raised within the palace walls, her horsemanship and archery were no less skilled than anyone's. Finding a worthy opponent, we hunted together in perfect harmony. Only when she encountered her anxious fiancé, who had come searching for her, did she reluctantly bid me farewell. Back then, I envied their childhood friendship, wishing the man I would marry would care for me so deeply. Ajuin poured me another cup of water, her expression serene, showing no trace of awkwardness at being caught in captivity by an acquaintance. She teased, "What? Wondering how I ended up in this predicament?" I shook my head. No, I was pondering what marriage truly brings to a woman. With the eldest princess fallen from grace and the new emperor still a child, the sole beneficiary was her husband, now crowned regent prince. I'm no fool, I could easily guess who orchestrated her downfall. Ajun shot me a glance, then recalled the rumors about me. Reunited after all this time, the women who once hunted wolves together, one cast off by her clan, unmarriageable, the other reduced to the lowest military prostitute. How laughable the world truly is. We locked eyes and burst into laughter. As unrestrained as when we first met, before marriage. The communal tent where all the women lived was hardly a place for serious discussion. Stating we had urgent matters to discuss, I suggested Ayun leave this place and move to my quarters. Ayun's laughter faded, her eyes gleaming. Wei Changfeng, do you know what this means? Once you board my pirate ship, there's no disembarking. I replied, no problem. My entire clan is now just me. I can make my own decisions. Ajun. I let Ajun pack her belongings while I went to the general's mansion to retrieve her household registry and destroy the daily records. Uncle Yi looked at me, hesitating to speak. Why did you actually choose one to leave? Changfeng, just because one Li Ming didn't work out doesn't mean no man in the world will. You don't have to settle down with a woman either. Women on the frontier are strong and resilient, and the customs are fierce. After losing their husbands, they often gather in same-sex communities, forming sworn sisterhoods and engaging in mutual self-care. I teased him half-seriously, Uncle Yi, what are you thinking? I'm too busy plotting rebellion to care about men or women. Uncle Ye's pacing halted abruptly, his face twisting from a bitter expression into a grimace. No, listen, you can train troops all you want, but rebellion is absolutely out of the question. We don't have enough men. Me. The Northern D issue remained unresolved, and the princess's faction wasn't ready either. It wasn't time to bring Uncle Yi into the fold yet. I made a face. Just kidding, teasing you. How many lives do I have to rebel? Uncle Yi stood half a step away, never glancing at the man I'd selected. But he didn't leave either, silently watching me the whole time. As I bid him farewell, he suddenly said, Changfeng, I'm an incompetent general. I've won few major battles myself. Especially after your father passed, I avoided war whenever peace talks were possible. A general's glory is built on countless bones. I always thought, to hell with military merit or whatever. If just a few fewer of my men died, if their mothers wept a little less, that would be enough. He shook his head. But for a commander, indecision and cowardice are deadly sins. One day, they will bring disaster. Fortunately, you are not like me. You take after your father, a natural-born commander. Whoever stands in your way, you dare to cut them down. He smiled at me. So tell me, has the time come when we must sever the heavenly path to survive? His tone was gentle, as if asking whether I needed extra clothes in the cold. Yet my eyes stung with tears. Uncle Yi wasn't ignorant, he simply trusted me. I said, yes. I cherish every soul here, just as you do. Uncle Yi said, good. He stepped closer, ruffled my hair, and pressed a piece of metal, warm from his body heat, into my hand. It was the general's seal. With this seal, I could command the entire army. Uncle Yi snorted. I spent the first half of my life following your father and became a general. The second half, following you. I'll regret it. When I saw Ayun again, my eyes were still red. Ayun raised an eyebrow. General Yi actually let you come with me? Me. She'd somehow procured a fine horse, yanked me onto it, and seated me before her. Giddy up! The princess whipped her reins, as spirited and dashing as in years past. The moment I arrived here, General Yi recognized me, Ajun sighed. His memory is truly remarkable. We only met once years ago during the late Emperor's Grand Military Review. No wonder Uncle Yi was so tense when I was training troops and searching for people, he already knew the princess was here. But he never confronted me directly. He only offered discreet guidance. I understood his meaning. Hearing this, I nervously turned to look at Ajun, fearing she might harbor resentment toward Uncle Yi. This is the future emperor. Ajun pressed her hand on my shoulder. Don't fidget. My presence here, and my connection to General Yi, is nothing short of a calamity, she said calmly. That he would show such kindness, remembering the late emperor and the imperial family, is already a great act of compassion. I hold this gratitude in my heart and dare not forget it. Only then did I breathe a sigh of relief. Your Highness possesses such broad-mindedness, truly the makings of a benevolent ruler. I flattered. Ajun. Enough with the sycophantic flattery. Dismount. Naturally, I obeyed without question. Yet when I looked up, there stood a familiar, weathered vermilion gate and a familiar figure clad in plain robes. Weren't we going to my home? Where was he taking me? Seeing us dismount, Xiatinyu sensibly approached to lead and tether the horses. Both men wore calm expressions. I had no choice but to suppress my confusion and feign the composure of an adult. Xiatinyu offered kindly, "Ask whatever you wish. His Highness won't mind." Me, "You've known about His Highness all along? So what was the point of me taking the knife off his neck and diligently searching for clues and people myself? Was it just me looking for trouble?" Xiatinyu met my icy glare and uncomfortably rubbed his neck. "Yes. The Regent Prince." He glanced at the princess and amended, "The rebel king sent me to find your highness, naturally providing some clues. But in the year I passed the imperial examinations, the new emperor was young. The rebel king usurped authority to conduct the palace examination himself, personally selecting me as the third-place scholar. He counts as my mentor and benefactor, having recognized my talent. That's why I've been wavering, unable to directly pledge allegiance to your highness." Wait. I was starting to get the picture. This guy's pretense of asking questions to clear things up was just a cover. His real goal was to use my reputation as a man of honor and loyalty to pledge his own allegiance, right? Xiatinyu pretended not to notice my dagger-like glare and smoothly continued. "It wasn't until I reported back to the rebel prince, 'Your Highness does not wish to return to the capital,' that he ordered me to leave the borderlands immediately. With the Northern D tribes stirring, I began to harbor doubts. I must also thank Lady Wei for enlightening me. Officials serve not the powerful, but the people. Only then did I find my way back, abandoning darkness for light." Xiatinyu bowed deeply to me, his expression earnest. I had no retort, only a hollow chuckle. Well, being well-read has its perks. He could charm the entire room with his silver tongue. The princess regent nodded. "Minister Xia, your efforts are appreciated." She glanced around and exchanged a knowing look with Xiatinyu. Xiatinyu understood instantly. The rebel prince's spies within my entourage have been completely eliminated. Me. The secret guards assigned to Xiatinyu by the regent prince must have been formidable warriors. How could a scholarly weakling like him take them all down? I couldn't help but scrutinize his bamboo-like, slender frame. Xiatinyu remained silent, merely presenting several corpses. "Right. Your Highness should depart this place," Xiatinyu said gravely. "A major battle looms. I intercepted a secret letter from the Northern D to the rebel king. The enemy attack will come within 3 days. With our local garrison numbers, we cannot hold out beyond 7 days without reinforcements." He gave a conservative estimate. But we both knew that if the Northern D mobilized their entire force, 5 days would be a stretch, let alone 7. Wait, his clarity suddenly made me realize why Xiatinyu had mentioned suspicions and turning from darkness to light. It wasn't simply a shift in allegiance, nor was it flattery toward the princess. Rather, through 3 events, the princess regent's refusal to return to the capital, the regent prince's transfer of his command, and the Northern D's unusual movements, he deduced the regent prince was likely colluding with the Northern D to launch a war. Indeed, the border cities are interdependent. If one falls, the others are imperiled. They would never withhold aid unless someone in the court deliberately obstructed the imperial decree. To destroy one person, risk the fall of several cities? Has he lost his mind? I found it utterly incomprehensible. Sending assassins or ordering Xiatinyu to act directly wouldn't either be less costly than this. Was it to keep his hands clean, unwilling to kill his wife himself, or to ensure absolute certainty? I couldn't fathom it. The princess looked at me with remorse, gazing at the people of the frontier represented behind me. I did not harm Bo Rin, yet he suffered because of me. He sought to force me out, and I granted his wish. I depart immediately for Lingqing Pass. The garrison commander there is an old acquaintance. I shall certainly lead troops back to reinforce you." She asked, "Will you remain here to defend the city, or accompany me?" Naturally, I would stay and share its fate. Yet unexpectedly, Xiatinyu also chose to remain. I couldn't help but remind him, "Minister Xia, you should accompany Her Highness to Lingqing Pass." I didn't know when Xia Tingyu and the princess had left the city in my past life, or if they had sought aid from Lingqing Pass. I only knew that, at least in my past life, reinforcements hadn't arrived in time for this place. Yet he and the princess had successfully entered the capital and killed the regent prince, avenging this land. The battlefield for a military commander lies at the frontier, for a civil official and a princess, it lies within the court. Why should he remain here, needlessly sacrificing a life destined for meteoric rise? Xia Tingyu merely shook his head, insisting, "Your Highness has no shortage of companions." "I shall stay here." The princess regent did not press him further. She bent down and embraced me. "We shall hunt the alpha wolf once more in the royal hunting grounds. My general. I will return. I swear it on my life. Wait for me." The princess turned, mounted her horse, and galloped toward the city gates. As she rode down the street, figures emerged one after another, men and women alike, all agile, riding in formation to flank her. I realized, contrary to my expectations, the princess hadn't been waiting for Xia Tingyu to arrive before being escorted back to the capital. She had been plotting for a long time, cultivating and connecting with many capable individuals. She was not a princess waiting to be rescued, but a phoenix poised to soar on the wind when the clouds parted. And so, a spark of confidence and boldness ignited within me. Perhaps this battle could be won. Once the princess had completely disappeared from sight, I too intended to take my leave. Xia Tingyu stopped me. "There's one more person. My lady, you should meet him." He handed me a scroll. I unrolled it to find it contained Wei Lan's confession. When we met yesterday, I had secretly rejoiced that Xia Tingyu could never uncover the truth about Wei Lan and me through conventional means, nor piece together the complex web of causes and effects. Little did I expect he would now surprise me with an unconventional revelation. The scroll detailed the Northern D's imminent invasion, confirmed the existence of the eldest princess and her future ascension, and recorded Wei Lan's confession that he was reborn, making every word credible. Beside each piece of information, vigorous small characters annotated whether it was true, false, or questionable. Xia Tingyu had judged all critical information to be true. After I finished reading, Xia Tingyu passed the scroll toward the candle flame. The fire consumed these secrets, its light casting shadows across his profile. The man before me was no scholarly weakling, he was clearly a cunning demon in a jade-like face. "You learned about the Northern D through Wei Lan?" I asked. Xia Tingyu shook his head. Wei Lan merely corroborated my suspicions. The most valuable part of her testimony was the timing of the Northern D invasion, though unfortunately, she didn't know it precisely, he said regretfully. My eyes widened in disbelief. "So you said the enemy would attack within 3 days?" Xia Tingyu looked innocent. "I made that up. I don't have the ability to intercept secret correspondence between the Northern D and the Regent Prince." He flashed a sly grin. "It's just that the sooner the princess sets out, the higher the chance she'll bring reinforcements back in time." I was speechless. This lie would be so easy to expose. If His Highness discovers you deceived him. Xia Tingyu blinked innocently. Couldn't the northern barbarians just suddenly postpone their attack without anyone noticing? I'm not a Northern D. How would I know what they're thinking? Me. So many tricks up his sleeve. I really want to run away. Xia Tingyu grabbed me by the arm. "Lady Wei, you're now my accomplice. Come on, let's go see your miraculous sister who can live her life over again." Xia Tingyu led me toward the rear chambers. The dilapidated mansion was overgrown with weeds, the back rooms were even darker and colder. No lamps were lit inside. I could barely make out Wei Lan, bound and kneeling on the floor. The moment we entered, she curled up, trembling and wailing, "I told you everything I know. What more do you want? Whoever you are, just let me go." Her voice was fierce. "If I die, neither the Wei family nor the Li family will ever let you go." Her words were full of spirit, still capable of threats. It seemed Xia Tingyu hadn't killed her. Xia Tingyu lit the lamp. As the light flared, Wei Lan instinctively looked to see who the villain who had kidnapped her was. "Xia Tingyu? Wei Changfeng? Why are you two still conspiring together?" Xia Tingyu corrected, "This isn't conspiring, it's being accomplices." "Who's your accomplice?" I protested weakly, Wei Lan, believe it or not, I had nothing to do with this. Wei Lan didn't believe me, of course. Her gaze felt like she wanted to devour me alive. She sneered coldly, what? So confident showing your face before me? Did you use my information to get close to His Highness? Xia Tingyu offered no reply, merely smiling, I'm preparing to eliminate witnesses. Any seasoned kidnapper knows letting hostages see your face ensures they'll never speak again. Wei Lan froze under his icy stare. Xia Tingyu's voice softened, Madam Li, forgive my rudeness. Necessity dictated my actions, I had no choice. Fortunately, the lady has soft bones and a soft tongue. She suffered little before spilling everything. That's quite satisfactory. Listen to this, is this even human speech? I almost feel sorry for Wei Lan now. Wei Lan trembled, pure fury. She clearly had 1,000 questions, but Xia Tingyu had no desire to answer. He stepped closer and delivered a swift hand blade strike. Wei Lan collapsed unconscious. Xia Tingyu motioned for me to help her up, but I didn't move. He adopted a helplessly weak demeanor, Madam Wei, please assist her. Send her back, she still has use. I trust a sturdy woman like Madam Wei, who wields a blade so deftly, can manage lifting someone. Me. I was only threatening you, not actually killing you. Why are you so petty? Xia Tingyu smiled, if Madam had truly killed me, wouldn't I be unable to threaten you now? How logical. I had no choice but to hoist Wei Lan onto my left shoulder, where to? Xia Tingyu clapped. Excellent! Madam Wei truly is a formidable woman. Me. If anyone says Xia Tingyu is a gentleman again, I'll fight them. That sly fox can't take even the slightest loss. Xia Tingyu still had some humanity left, he didn't actually make me carry the person all the way back. Just outside his house, we spotted a carriage. Xia Tingyu motioned for me to put the person inside. Was this part of your plan too? I was starting to admire him a little. Xia Tingyu leaned out to haggle with the driver, 20 coins, right? Charge it to Mrs. Li from the north side of town. She's drunk, she'll pay you when she wakes up. I retracted that bit of admiration. Is being this stingy really right? Xia Tingyu remained unfazed, a man like me, rejected at his own wedding, needs to save up a dowry. Otherwise, how could I ever find a wife from a good family? I shut up. Xia Tingyu leaned against the carriage wall, feigning sleep. He hadn't rested well lately, dark circles ringed his eyes, stark against his jade-white skin. When people are weary, their guard is down. I seized the moment to press him, why did you lead me to you that day? Xia Tingyu's voice was low and hoarse, laced with exhaustion, to confirm your connection with the northern barbarians. You suspect the northern barbarians stirred because they saw me training troops? Yes. I asked, did you also suspect me? Xia Tingyu opened his eyes with a sigh, his ink-black gaze clear and sharp, not a trace of sleepiness. Enough, why so many questions? If my lady doesn't wish to share her secrets, she shouldn't press further. Resisting the urge to probe secrets is exceedingly difficult. He pressed his temples, I truly appreciate you helping me rediscover my true self, and I genuinely respect your need for privacy. Otherwise, I wouldn't have concealed Wei Lan's matter. His expression turned unusually serious. Wei Changfeng, whether it's a wise ruler or a close elder, you must guard your secrets well. Human hearts are fickle, no one can resist the temptation of knowing the future. If Wei Lan fell into the hands of the regent prince or the eldest princess, she'd only face a fate worse than death. Do you understand what I mean? I froze. Xia Tingyu's hand brushed past my neck as he lifted the curtain, his tone softening again. We're here. Get down. The moment he stepped off the carriage, Xia Tingyu shed the last glimmer of humanity. He truly despised Wei Lan, walking deliberately on the side opposite where I carried her, as if afraid to touch her. Wei Lan's rented courtyard was exquisitely beautiful, yet utterly devoid of life. Xia Tingyu scanned the surroundings, raising an eyebrow. I thought Li Gongzi would be frantic after 2 days without Wei Lan. He hasn't returned at all. I laid Wei Lan on the bed. You said she's useful. How exactly? Xia Tingyu pondered, my judgment was flawed. Now it seems her usefulness is limited. Sitting idle waiting for the princess to bring reinforcements is the worst option. We must keep more cards up our sleeves. He traced an imaginary map in the air. The border cities are too distant from the capital. Though they pay homage to His Majesty, they won't blindly obey. The regent prince wants to cut off reinforcements from the provinces, but relying solely on royal decrees is difficult. The most effective approach would be to ambush our scouts en route or incite local commanders to distrust our intelligence, delaying military operations. He marked several cities on the map, but Li Ming is different. His noble status and well-known presence at the frontier mean that if he reaches his destination alive, he can undoubtedly persuade the local commander to bring reinforcements back. I thought securing Lady Li would facilitate persuasion. No. Wei Lan awoke. Her piercing scream startled us. Forgetting all decorum, she wailed, "No. Minister Xia." Recalling his thunderous methods and heart of stone, she turned to me. I said I was reborn. Everything I say comes true. Li Ming will die. He will die. I beg you, Changfeng. I beg you. For the sake of our sisterhood, don't send him. You've already met His Highness, haven't you? You've secured His Highness's favor. Glory is within reach. You can't let me become a pitiful widow. She cried until her voice cracked. I didn't know whether to marvel that Li Ming had earned her genuine devotion, so much so that she'd stoop to pleading for him, or to lament that, at this point, her desire for his survival stemmed only from her refusal to become a pitted widow with no chance of advancement. I didn't agree to her request. For the greater good, trading one life for the salvation of thousands was the most prudent course. For personal reasons, even his wife held no right to dictate Li Ming's path or fate. Ignoring Xia Tingyu's disapproving gaze, I declared, Li Ming is not under my command. Even if I forced him, he might refuse. Summon him here. Let him choose for himself. When Li Ming was called, he was thoroughly reluctant. He seemed to have argued with Wei Lan countless times before. Before he even entered the courtyard, his indignant complaints echoed, Wei Lan. I told you, don't call me back for no reason. I really want to. Spotting Xia Tingyu and me standing side by side, he froze, instinctively turning to search for Wei Lan. Seeing her face streaked with tears, he scurried over and gently wiped her cheeks with his sleeve. What's wrong? What happened? Did someone bully you? Wei Lan, oblivious to his sudden warmth, clutched his collar desperately. Li Ming, don't go. Don't go. Li Ming was utterly confused. I concealed the truth about the princess and Wei Lan's rebirth, explaining as objectively as possible that the Northern D were about to invade and that his request for reinforcements would be twice as effective. You're really giving me such a big job? Li Ming jumped up, excitedly patting the rifle slung across his back. Heh, I've only been training as a scout for a month. Xia Tingyu, it's mainly because your identity is useful, not your skills. Li Ming selectively ignored that. He asked me, what if I don't go? Me, leave behind tokens that prove your identity. I'll send other scouts with them to request aid. Li Ming, it'd be more effective if I went myself. The journey is perilous, I hinted. Not just the Northern D, others will fight desperately to intercept you. You might very well never return. Li Ming didn't turn to look at Wei Lan. He only asked me, those guarding the city face greater danger, but you'll fight alongside everyone until the end. Right? I replied, naturally. I am a warrior. This is the choice I must make. Li Ming smiled. I am a warrior too. Wei Lan couldn't bear it anymore. She clung to Li Ming in despair. Li Ming, you'll die. Don't go, just for me, please? Don't trust them. They don't care if you live or die. Look at me. They just tied me up and interrogated me for 2 days, just to get me to reveal. Wei Lan abruptly stopped speaking under Li Ming's questioning gaze. She couldn't say what she knew. If she spoke, she'd have to reveal the truth about her rebirth. Once she mentioned rebirth, Li Ming would fully understand why she had arranged the marriage swap. Before, he'd thought she'd merely been momentarily dazzled by Xia Tingyu's bright future, and he'd forgiven her. But if he knew she'd deliberately stolen her sister's life, willing to abandon him and disregard his survival, Given his temperament, he'd never forgive her again. Their relationship was already strained. If he lived, but no longer loved her. Wei Lan shuddered. What meaning would his life hold then? Under Xia Tingyu's piercing, mocking gaze, Wei Lan gradually loosened her grip on Li Ming's hand. We agreed that once hostilities began, Li Ming would depart. I ordered him and other scouts to don identical disguises, splitting into several groups of 5, all masked and mounted. Whoever reached another garrison alive would be Li Ming. Li Ming himself raised no objections. Bursting with passion, he spent the next few days training diligently at the main camp alongside everyone else, just like any rookie soldier facing battle for the first time. I didn't stop him, nor did I pour cold water on his enthusiasm. Every extra moment of practice, every ounce of heightened spirit, could potentially save his life in the moment of life and death. Wei Lan didn't come either. To be precise, she left, departed the city. Before leaving, she made a point of visiting me and Xia Tingyu. With a sinister tone, she dropped this: in my past life, this city fell. You only survived because you followed His Highness. But this time, you stayed behind. Truly, karma. I pretended not to hear, merely teasing Xia Tingyu. Minister Xia, you could still leave now. Xia Tingyu shot me a glance before lowering his eyes in silence. I leaned closer, propping open his eyelids. Humph. If you don't want to talk, just keep staring down. Xia Tingyu. Privately, I asked him, have you ever thought about what if we really die here? Uncle Yi and I couldn't leave. This was the place we'd guarded our entire lives. The townspeople and soldiers couldn't leave either. The former were military households. Leaving the border without cause was a grave crime. The latter deserting their posts in battle faced execution. But he was different. Xia Tingyu pondered for a moment. Miss Wei, please enroll me in the military registry. If I die in battle, my parents and sister will receive more compensation. I replied, the princess won't owe your family that little. I'll personally secure you a spot in the strongmen's roster. Xia Tingyu clapped his hands. Most gracious. What a peculiar man. Clearly cunning and scheming, his heart darker than most, yet here he was playing the hero. 4 days later, at midnight, a shrill bugle pierced the night. Enemy attack! Uncle Yi and I rushed to the main camp, assuming our positions as we'd rehearsed countless times while dispatching scouts under cover of our troops. Since Wei Lan's departure, Li Ming had grown much more reserved. Before leaving, he pressed a letter into my hand. Wei Changfeng, if I fall in battle, deliver this to Wei Lan. With that, he mounted his horse and rode off into the night with his comrades, their mission burning in their hearts. This battle proved far more difficult than we had anticipated. Spring and summer brought lush pastures, the peak season when the nomadic Beatty tribes amassed their greatest supplies and national strength. This meant they had to win this battle, plundering sufficient wealth and grain, or they would struggle to survive the coming autumn and winter. Both sides had no retreat, only a fight to the death. This was the largest enemy force this city had ever faced. Standing on the ramparts, I gazed out to see a sea of black armor stretching to the horizon, endless. No room for cowardice, no room for hesitation. A commander is the soul of his army. Leaving Uncle Yi to command the city, I strapped the commander's seal to my waist and led the soldiers into the fiercest fighting at the front lines. My long sword was hacked until its edge was chipped. I snatched another sword from the ground, whether it belonged to a fallen comrade or an enemy, I didn't care. Fight again, seize again. Repeat. On the first day, our morale soared as we drove the enemy back 3 li. On the second day, enemy reinforcements poured in relentlessly, and we barely held the city. On the third day, our fire, oil and boulders were exhausted. We could only use our lives to block the enemy's scaling ladders. Questions began to surface. People asked Uncle Yi, asked me, why hadn't the northern barbarians, who usually relied on surprise raids and withdrew when plunder failed, retreated? Had we sought reinforcements? Could we hold out? Our answer was the blades and spears in our hands. Only by fighting could we survive. By the 4th day, arrows and weapons were exhausted. Newly recruited soldiers could not even obtain iron blades. Then everyone understood, this war was unlike the skirmishes of the past. The people of the frontier carried the blood of heroes in their veins. Women spontaneously brought their household spatulas and farming tools to the blacksmiths, demanding the iron be forged into swords, spears, and arrows to protect their sons. Children scrambled atop the city walls, using their agility to pluck weapons from the bodies of fallen foes and comrades. The women who once served in the princess's tent emerged from their quarters, stepping back into the public eye. They reappeared as human beings, as warriors. The strong marched to the battlefield, the frail took up medicine, just as they would in the army. On the 5th day, the vanguard was wiped out, the center suffered heavy casualties, and the rearguard, responsible for logistics and supplies, stepped forward. In the borderlands, this was the most unique army. It comprised both soldiers and civilians, men and women. Husbands and sons formed the main fighting force at the front, while wives and mothers remained behind, tasked with bringing back the wounded and assisting on the battlefield. When it was their turn to fight, there were no proper weapons left. The elderly women wielded fire pokers and rolling pins. This was a force that could not retreat under any circumstances. If those in front fell, the enemy's iron hooves would trample their loved ones behind. If those in the rear withdrew, the sons fighting ahead would never return home. Fight! Fight was the only option. On the 6th day, the dead and wounded piled up so high that the medics worked non-stop and still couldn't keep up. Mourning cries rose from the city, then gradually faded. Women wiped their tears, stroked their children's heads, rolled up their sleeves, and joined the ranks on the ramparts. And so the children grew up in a flash. When I went down to tend to my wounds, a little girl of 5 or 6 bandaged me. Her eyes red, she sprinkled the last of the medicinal powder onto my cuts. Looking at me, she forced a tearful smile. "It doesn't hurt, sister. It doesn't hurt." Her small hand reached into the pouch at her waist, pulling out a small piece of rice candy. She carefully broke off a bit. "See? My patients get candy." The little girl touched my head, just as her mother had touched hers. Uncle Yi finally couldn't sit still. These past days, he had suppressed too much fear and too many questions, barely sleeping at all. He whispered to me, "Changfeng, are reinforcements truly coming? Can we really hold out until they arrive? If they don't come soon, neither our supplies nor our morale will last." I didn't know. But I declared with conviction, they will come. We will wait for them. The grain candy still clung to my tongue as I braced myself with my sword and returned to the battlefield. I could no longer leave or step down at will, for when I looked around, the warriors' eyes had grown desperate and numb. Only the commander's presence could give them a shred of courage. On the 7th day, Xia Tingyu, covered in blood like me, stepped back from my side and took his place at the war drums on the city wall. The 6 arts of the gentleman, rites, music, archery, charioteering, calligraphy, and mathematics. Xia Tingyu excelled in every one of them. He picked up the drumsticks and sang aloud. A white steed adorned with golden bridle, galloping swiftly toward the northwest. After days of relentless combat without rest, Xia Tingyu's voice was low and hoarse, like a sword polished by yellow sand. Yet the military drumbeat rang out high and stirring, striking the heart of every warrior. Who might this knight be? A roving hero from Yuan Bing. I raised my long sword and bellowed in a voice equally hoarse, "All soldiers, heed my command." No further orders were needed. Where the commander's blade pointed was the path forward. Throw yourselves into the fray. Where blades clash, how could one cling to life? Soldiers mortally wounded clung desperately to their foes, using their bodies, their teeth, their very lives to buy their comrades the chance to sever enemy heads. Our names are inscribed among the brave, we must not yield to selfish thought. The soldiers surrounding me grew fewer and fewer. I could only abandon the charge, fighting my way back toward the city gates. This was the end. There was nowhere left to retreat. We sacrifice our bodies for the nation's crisis, viewing death as returning home. Xia Tingyu's battle song still echoed. At first, it was only his voice, then joined by children, women, wounded soldiers. Countless voices rose from the city, countless hearts united, countless hands supported each other. And so, within this song, we held the city gate, not yielding an inch. There was no time for thoughts. Blood flowed into my eyes, no time to wonder whose it was, no time to wipe it away. All I wanted was to hold on a little longer, just a little longer. We wore down the northern barbarians' war horses until their assault finally slowed. But we too were spent. Time and life were but fleeting dust on the battlefield. All we could do was pray. Sun and moon, turn faster, faster still. Bring the distant reinforcements here, drive the wolves from this land. I don't know how long I stood at the city gate, it felt like 10,000 years, before I suddenly heard cheers. Squinting into the distance, I saw several armies accelerating toward us. Some wore crimson robes, banners fluttering high as they charged. Behind her rose the desert sun, just beginning its ascent. Reinforcements have arrived. For the first time, I heard Xia Tingyu's voice tremble. Changfeng, reinforcements have arrived. We waited for them. We did it. This was the 10th day of defending the city. The princess brought 2 contingents, one she had transferred from Lingqing Pass, and another our scouts had recruited from various garrisons. They met en route and united under the princess's command. Their arrival instantly eased the pressure within the city. Supplies of troops, horses, and provisions were replenished. The wounded could finally step back and focus on recovery. Including you. Xia Tingyu grabbed my shoulders and yanked me down from the ramparts. I bent to inspect the wound on my waist and abdomen. It had long since stopped bleeding and didn't hinder my movement at all. It wasn't a fatal wound to begin with. When we joined forces with the princess's men, I blacked out and fell from my horse, only to discover a small gash in my abdomen, stitched up and healed. Hearing my mutterings, Xia Tingyu twisted my ear. Me, what's that for? Getting injured on the battlefield is normal, isn't it? Xia Tingyu, I'll count to 3. His face turned cold. For some reason, I felt a chill and obediently followed behind him. Xia Tingyu, did you cry when I fell? I remembered landing in a steady embrace. That person kept calling my name, hot tears falling onto my face. But when I woke up, Xia Tingyu insisted it wasn't him who caught me, it was Uncle Yi. I pointed out that the last time Uncle Yi shed tears was when my father died. Xia Tingyu, yeah, he thought you were dying. Me, still denying it? Xia Tingyu shoved the blanket over my face, forcibly silencing me. Patients need sleep. Then he bolted. I didn't believe him. I don't know what possessed me, but I just wanted to provoke him, to pry that mouth open. So I started randomly picking on him. Xia Tingyu went from flushing red and arguing with me to calmly being a jerk. He said, nobody cried. Horse piss on your face. They just didn't dare tell you because they didn't want you to feel embarrassed. Me. I jumped up and punched him. Xia Tingyu got angry. Is this the time to be jumping around and throwing punches? Just walk properly. I wasn't listening to him. The war dragged on for another 7 days before the Northern D forces began their gradual withdrawal. The small town couldn't sustain so many horses and soldiers. As soon as the fighting ended, the princess organized the troops for an orderly, phased evacuation, leaving only a limited number behind to assist with post-war reconstruction. The princess asked Xia Tingyu, Minister Xia, will you accompany me back to the capital? Her battle wasn't over yet, she still needed a victorious conclusion. Xia Tingyu politely declined, claiming he'd been wounded and couldn't endure the journey. Ha! He only had a bruise on the back of his hand. He dodged when I punched him yesterday and hit the wall. Then that sly fox presented me with a lengthy bill, insisting how precious his hand was. He practically included the pocket money of the child from the family of the tutor who taught him piano as a kid. The princess looked at us with a gaze that made my skin crawl, uttering a dismissive "Oh. Next time we meet, I'll give you a proper ceremony to promote you to general." The irritation vanished. I wanted to jump around a few more times. I cheered, yes. And the princess smiled too. Xia Tingyu and I escorted her out the city gates. Last time we parted, we each headed to unknown battlefields. This time, we only await the wine of triumph. Thus, even in farewell, there's no need for sorrow. The moment she departed, I wanted to return and help Uncle Yi verify the roster of warriors. It must accurately record the origin, identity, and age of each fallen soldier for subsequent compensation. Those with exceptional military merit would also have their parents and wives honored. This was a matter that brooked no carelessness. The departed are gone, leaving only the living behind. It is our duty to care for and comfort them to the best of our ability, to honor the spirits of the fallen. In the summer heat, bodies decompose quickly. Xiaotingyou said my injuries made it unwise for me to personally identify the corpses. He volunteered to go in my place, checking each record against the roster. I glanced at the plain clothes he changed into again and said it would stink. Xiaotingyou fell silent. Understood. Finish sorting yesterday's records and give me the list. I'll double-check them tomorrow. After verification, I'll report back in 2 days, or else I won't return at all. Me. The barracks provide hot water every evening. My tent is empty, you can come wash there. I feared he might misunderstand. Rest assured, I'll avoid you. Xiaotingyou, no, it stinks. I don't want to come back. What the hell was he being stubborn about? I couldn't persuade him, so I had to let him be. Unexpectedly, Xiaotingyou returned in the evening. He stood 8 zhang away from me. I couldn't tell if he smelled, but his face looked sour from a distance. Behind him trailed a dust-covered Wei Lan. Xiaotingyou spoke rapidly. The city gate inspection. Ran into her. Got tangled up. Figured you had something to give her, so I brought her along. Before I could approach, he recoiled like a mouse cornered by a cat. You two talk. I'm heading back to bathe. I chuckled. Why so concerned about appearances? Who among us wasn't disheveled and blood-stained during the battle? Xiaotingyou shot me a resentful glare. Can't reason with a blockhead like you. Wei Lan waited quietly for us to finish. She softened her sharpness, a faint hint of joy in her eyes. After Xiaotingyou left, she fired off a series of questions. I heard the war was won because Li Ming brought back reinforcements, right? Where is he? Take me to him. Is he injured? I remained silent. With my silence, the joy faded from her face. What do you mean? Where is he? You're all still alive, so it shouldn't be just him. I said, you came back too late. Li Ming had indeed returned with reinforcements. Of the scouts who went with him, only 3 or 5, including himself, made it back. Each was gravely wounded, clinging to life as they followed the army back here. I had been unconscious from my injuries then. When I awoke, Uncle Yi told me Li Ming had returned, but his condition was dire. His wounds had festered down to the bone. He ran high fevers repeatedly, and his lucid moments were few within a day. When I visited him, he was unusually awake and mustered his strength to speak at length with me. I asked why he hadn't stayed at the enemy camp to rest and recover, why he'd pushed himself so hard. Li Ming forced a pale smile, faint traces of his former spirited self still visible. I know I won't make it. I just wanted to return here to rest in peace. Is that so wrong? He said it was strange, those 20 years in the capital couldn't compare to these 2 months here, where he finally felt truly alive. Alive with vitality and hope. But now he was dying. He whispered, Wei Changfeng, I'm a little scared. I couldn't comfort him. I said, I'm sorry. Perhaps I should have urged him to leave. As reinforcements arrived for him, the princess's men also arrived. He replied absently, it's fine. This young master chose it himself. Humph, at least I got to be a great hero who turned the tide once. We fell silent for a moment. Li Ming teased me, don't be quiet. Every word this young master speaks now is one less he'll have. He'd intended to speak about himself, but rather than criticize his own life before dying, he turned his words against me instead. He said, Wei Changfeng, you're a brave warrior and skilled at training troops, but you're too soft-hearted. When bad luck brings you into contact with evil people, you suffer terribly. I replied, thanks for the invitation. I've already suffered enough. More than enough. We both thought of the same person at the same time. The smile on Li Ming's face faded. After a long pause, he said, truthfully, I've always wondered, if I'd stood up to my parents and built my own legacy, Lan wouldn't have ended up like this. But I was naive, impulsive, driven by whims. She was a daughter pampered with countless treasures, raised in luxury. It wasn't wrong for her to desire a suitable husband. I failed to meet her expectations, which is why she appeared so hateful before you. It wasn't appropriate for me to comment on Wei Lan in front of him at this moment. Li Ming didn't seem to notice. He continued, I should earn considerable merit and rewards, shouldn't I? If she's still willing to be my wife, it wouldn't dishonor her. If she isn't willing, then please give her the letter I gave you." After speaking so much in one breath, his strength failed him. He gasped for air for a long while, his gaze drifting toward the moon outside the window. "With the war won, she'll come back, won't she?" he murmured softly, closing his eyes heavily before anyone could respond. He never waited for the one he'd risked his life to return for, the one he'd longed to see one last time. Now, she had overcome her fear and come back for him. Too late. I relayed both choices Li Ming had offered to Wei Lan. Wei Lan trembled as she opened the letter. Inside was indeed a divorce petition. I noticed water-stained smudges across the paper, guessing the writer had wept repeatedly. Now, the letter was even more waterlogged. Wei Lan made no sound, but tears fell in steady streams. She asked me, "What else did he say?" I shook my head, then recalled Li Ming's dying words, "Have I finally lived up to your expectations now?" After a moment's hesitation, I relayed his exact words. Wei Lan finally broke down in sobs. Trembling, she tore the divorce papers to shreds. A month later, the princess consort arrived safely in the capital. She dispatched a ceremonial official to escort us back, and specifically wrote me a letter. "We departed in disarray then, now we should return in glory, both of us." Signed, Ajuin. The affairs here were indeed mostly settled, so I agreed. Li Ming's status was unique, so the Guangping Marquis household specially sent someone with the ceremonial official to welcome the heir's soul back to his ancestral home. It was said Li Ming's mother had fainted from grief multiple times, otherwise, she would have come personally to retrieve her son. I had no authority to decide, so I instructed them to seek out Wei Lan. Unexpectedly, Wei Lan refused. A major dispute erupted between the two sides, but Wei Lan stubbornly refused to budge. She only said, "He wishes to rest where he fought and died. He does not want to return." What Li Ming hadn't cared about in life, she finally saw in death. The Guangping Marquis household had no choice but to ask her to return and explain to the main wife herself. Our group was thus reunited, and we set off together. Xia Tingyu sighed. But Li Ming had died in battle, and Wei Lan was his widow. Xia Tingyu owed her some respect, so she forced herself to suppress her displeasure. Wei Lan no longer cared. She secluded herself, refusing to meet us unless absolutely necessary. For half a month's journey, it felt as if she didn't exist at all. Upon reaching the capital, the Li family gathered at the city gates, all clad in mourning white. Parents shouldn't mourn their children, yet Li's mother had pinned white flowers throughout her hair. The moment she saw the procession approach, she lunged forward, crying out "Minger." Each cry like blood-soaked tears. There was no coffin in the procession. Wei Lan had no choice but to step forward and repeat her refusal to the Li family. Li's mother already despised her intensely, how could she accept such a reason? Rage surged through her, and she raised her hand to strike, "You venomous woman. If not for you, Minger would never have gone to the frontier. Our family has generations of military honors, what need did we have for his meager achievements?" Wei Lan did not restrain her. She retorted, "Me, venomous? At that spring banquet long ago, you brought Li Ming to sit beside me and observe me, was it not because you coveted my birth and beauty, seeking to wed me? But my birth and beauty meant I could never accept a husband mediocre and foolish, controlled by his own mother, achieving nothing. Madam, daughters from families like ours are raised this way. We are snobbish and vain, valuing lineage and power above all else, terrified of falling from the clouds once married. So all I possess is noble status and beauty, precisely what you covet. What right have you to blame me?" These words stunned not only Mrs. Li but also Lady Wei, who had rushed to comfort her daughter. She stared at her daughter as though seeing a stranger. "When did I ever teach you to care only about family background and power?" She tried to argue, but only met Wei Lan's weary gaze. Wei Lan said, "Mother, if only you had sent me to the frontier back then. So I could have known that even without marrying or pleasing a husband, one can still live a good life. Perhaps then, I wouldn't have become so obsessed." Madame Wei raised her hand and struck her across the face. Throughout this, she dared not look at Xia Tingyu and me standing nearby. Xia Tingyu and I had been invited to attend the Grand Princess's coronation ceremony. Xia Tingyu had enjoyed the emperor's favor when he was regent. No, now he should be called the rebel prince, and now, with the change of dynasty, he still received the new emperor's favor. The Xia family's doorstep was suddenly bustling with visitors. The Xia household closed its doors to visitors, and Xia Tingyu himself kept his distance. Me, why come here instead of going home after your shift, Minister Xia? Xia Tingyu perched on the wall of the mansion I'd just been granted by His Majesty. Pushing off with one hand, he landed nimbly, to hide. Me, get lost. General Wei is so heartless, Xia Tingyu murmured, sitting beside me. It was midsummer, and the lotus blossoms in the courtyard were in full bloom, swaying gently in the breeze. Xia Tingyu dipped his hand into the water, pulled out a lotus pod, washed his hands, and began shelling the seeds one by one. Once he filled a plate, he pushed it toward me. Here. Lodging fee. That's from the lotus pond in my family's pond, I reminded him. But I provided the labor. Xia Tingyu waved his hand at me. His hand brushed past my nose, carrying a faint, fragrant breeze. It was a fresh scent reminiscent of lotus seed husks, mingled with other herbal and woody notes, strangely pleasant. So, like a scholar bewitched by a fox spirit, I grabbed his hand. Why does it smell so good? Lord Xia, likely experiencing his first brush with flirtatious teasing, froze momentarily. He confessed honestly, following Pinglan's advice, I dabbed some perfume on my wrist. Xia Pinglan, Xia Tingyu's younger sister, was said to have inherited even more of the Xia family's scholarly traditions than her brother. She was currently the focus of their parents' full attention and cultivation. Me, oh? Why apply perfume? Xia Tingyu leaned closer to me. Does it smell nice? I nodded. His outer robe seemed scented too, fragrant enough to make my head spin and my heart race. Xia Tingyu smiled, just for this. His cool fingertips cupped my cheek, touching and withdrawing in an instant. He said, Changfeng, once you've welcomed back your father's spirit tablet, there's something I wish to tell you. On the day I was appointed a general, His Majesty bestowed a special favor upon me. I had been cast out of my family by Lady Wei, my name erased from the clan registry. Yet the Emperor granted me permission to retrieve my father's spirit tablet. Unreasonable, yet perfectly aligned with my heart's desire. I chose an auspicious day, donned my general's robes, and went to the Wei residence. In my past life, I had once knelt here, pleading with my mother to let me return, begging her not to leave me with the Li family. The door never opened. In this life, this door dared not close against me. Madame Wei, Wei Lan, and the clan elders were all present. I said little, passing through their midst. The clan elder hobbled after me with his cane. Changfeng, you've truly made something of yourself. Your mother was foolish to drive away such a fine son. With your achievements, you deserve a place in the Wei family genealogy. In 100 years, our descendants will erect a temple to honor you. I was exasperated, it's unnecessary. The elder hurriedly protested, how could descendants be excluded from the ancestral hall and family registry? In my opinion, we could simply erase the outsider's name and write yours back in cleanly. It was laughable, really, the only outsider here was Lady Wei. Hearing this, her face drained of color. Given the clan elder's standing, he could indeed act on my father's behalf to divorce her. Her lips parted to curse the bastard, but she dared not. Instead, she merely moved her lips, seeking help from Wei Lan's indifferent face, then turned to me. I did not speak for her, just as she had never spoken for me all these years. I carried my father's spirit tablet back and left without looking back, this place where I had briefly stayed as a guest, yet which had ruined my entire life. From this day forward, the way of the Wei family in the capital would be the way of Wei Changfeng. Xia Tingyu followed close behind, shielding me from the persistent old clan elders while carefully gauging my expression. Only after I placed father's spirit tablet in the ancestral hall did he begin his scathing critique of those decrepit elders, from their dried orange peel faces to their minds filled with nothing but dregs. Me, why didn't you speak up back at the Wei residence? Such respect for elders and care for juniors? Xia Tingyu, your father was present. I restrained myself. I couldn't help but laugh, it's fine. My father wouldn't mind. Before he passed, he told me that if he ever had a falling out with my mother, he'd use his spirit tablet to crack walnuts. Xia Tingyu didn't laugh. He seemed a bit tense. I began to realize what he was about to say. I felt a bit tense too. Xia Tingyu closed his eyes briefly. Actually, Wei Lan also mentioned in his will that in our past lives, we were destined to be together and achieve great success. I was thinking, I cut him off. First, that's a terrible opening line. Second, Wei Lan would never say we were destined to be together. Third, you can take a breath and pause between sentences. Xia Tingyu took a breath. Well, I meant to say, my family still has my younger sister to carry on the line. Since I can't marry now either, how about I become your dependent? He studied my expression. I'd pursue you even as a dependent. I said, fine. Now Xia Tingyu wanted to slap himself. Why change his words so quickly? Was he taking her in or pursuing her? He dared not ask, only stepping forward gently to embrace his beloved. A brief embrace. For the rest of their long lives together, he would tell her all the words he'd never dared utter. He wanted to thank her for disrupting that arranged marriage, thank her for reshaping him with kindness and courage in that frontier town. Xia Tingyu was a master strategist, a recognized sage, yet only she had helped him recognize his true self, becoming the brave guardian standing before his people. During those 10 days of swordplay and shadow, when death loomed ever closer, he never once regretted it. When she smiled at him, that fallen blossom from his parents' courtyard finally drifted into the river of his heart. The story ends here. Thank you all for your companionship. See you in the next chapter.